Hi again. Are you ready for another story from the Bible? This second story about Moses is how he leads the Hebrew people out of Egypt. Listen to what God wants Moses to do, and if Moses is able to do it with or without God's help. Moses was an important man in Egypt, but he was very unhappy when he saw how badly the Egyptian masters treated their Hebrew slaves. One day he saw an Egyptian whip a Hebrew man. Moses killed the Egyptian, but someone saw him and Moses knew the king would hear about it. The king would have Moses put to death. Moses escaped into the desert and lived there for a long time. One day he saw a bush on fire, but it wasn't burning up. As he went closer, God spoke to him. "You must go to Egypt," said God. "Take your brother Aaron with you and ask the king to let the Hebrews leave Egypt. He will not agree, but I will make him. Then all the world will know that I am God. You will lead the Hebrews to a land where they will be free and have plenty to eat." Moses didn't want to go, but he knew he must obey God. He and Aaron went to the king and asked him to set the Hebrews free. The king was very angry. He said he wouldn't let the Hebrews go and made them work even harder. Moses was in a despair. He asked God to help him. Then he went back to the king. Moses warned the king that if he did not let the Hebrews leave Egypt, God would make terrible things happen. But still the king refused. Then the terrible things began. First, the river turned red and no one could drink the water. A week later, thousands of frogs swarmed out of the river and into all the Egyptian houses. I have a picture of this. Here's one of the Egyptian houses, and you can see the frogs all over on the floor and up on the walls, and the Egyptian women trying to get them off and maybe out the house. Next, we're going to learn about other things that God did to try to convince the king to let the Hebrews go. Flies and locust. Then there were clouds of horrible flies which filled the king's palace and all the houses, except the Hebrews' houses. But the king wouldn't let the Hebrews go. Then the animals began to die, and the Egyptian people were ill with horrible sores on their bodies. After that, there were terrible storms. Hail flattened the crops, and great clouds of locusts ate up what was left. But still the king would not let the Hebrews go. The worst thing of all was when the eldest child of every Egyptian family died one night. God had told Moses what the Hebrews should do to be safe. Every family killed a lamb and put a little blood on the doorpost of the house. Then they roasted the lamb and ate it with flatbread and herbs. God said the Hebrews should always remember when death passed over them and keep it as a special feast day. At last the king said the Hebrews could go. The next day they left Egypt, following a column of smoke during the day and a column of fire at night sent by God. Then the king changed his mind. He sent his army racing in chariots after the Hebrews. The Hebrews saw them coming and were terrified. In front of them was the Red Sea, and behind them were the king's soldiers. Moses told them not to be afraid because God would help them. He pointed across the water, and a strong east wind sent by God blew away the water, making a dry path for them to hurry across. But when the Egyptian soldiers tried to follow them, the sea rushed back and the soldiers were all drowned. The Hebrews were free at last to go to the land which God had promised them. Did you pay attention and see what God wanted Moses to do? If you said lead the people out of Egypt, you're correct. And did he need help from God? Yes, he did. He couldn't convince the king to let the Hebrew people leave Egypt. But he did. But God, how did God convince him? He sent frogs and flies and locusts. That was a good story. I hope you'll join me for another 2 stories about Moses. I'll see you then.